Good morning. This is the third time that I have attempted to do an effective talk on this topic. Last week in Norma Talks, I spoke about it, and I decided to do a whole different topic today, but doing the same information because I never really say the same things exactly the same all the time whenever I lecture. So I did. I Norma talk at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning. I started. I need to realize I don't know what I did, but it messed up again. So whether it is because this topic doesn't want to be put out there, which I do not believe, I just think it's a matter of me what now being aware of working this program, learning how to do it effectively, and feeling that it's not working easily at times. And also last week I mentioned that I thought I had it down pretty good, and then it didn't work very well at all. Topic today is, how does etheric genetics affect us? How does our ancestors affect us, really? When you think about your conception, science has told us that a sperm enters an egg. They fight for what kind of nose you have, what kind of body type, and many other things that go on in that. We also know that the soul has to at some point come in and join in with that sperm and an egg that begin to create. I heard that actually it's 8 days before really that. In 8 days, they're still kind of figuring out what it's going to be. Then it begins to take life in body form. But we also know that the soul, when the soul enters, that's when it becomes alive. And yet, I know from a lot of work that I've done at 2 months old, decisions are being made by the body. So is the soul already connected? And I think there's an attachment sometimes, not always. So what happens at the conception? A light goes on. Now, how I learned this was in like a dream one night. I was out in the sky, and there were all these lights, beautiful, beautiful golden lights, just twinkling away all over the sky. And I said to the person, who I have no idea who that was, well, what are these? And I was told, these are conception points. And at the point of a conception, everything about that life is known, all the possibilities, all the detriments, all of those things are all known. And so consequently, at that moment, the soul can choose. Now, there's a friend of mine who gave birth as a single mother in the 50s, which is not a very popular time to be a single mother. She gave birth to a little boy. When he was around 8, one day he just ran in from playing outside, came right up to her and said, "You know, Mom, there was a big lineup to be your son, and I'm so glad you're my mom." And he ran back out again. Something similar to that. And that's what's true. People line up to have a certain body because it fits who they are or what they are, whatever's in there. I've worked with people who have been picked a body because it was a great body, but they didn't look at what the life it was going to be like, and it was not a very happy life. She had a great body. It was a woman. Another woman picked a body because the person that she cared about had already gone ahead and would be her brother, only to find, I think when they were 4 and 3, the parents divorced and they were actually separated. So again, a lot of hurt and pain. Now, there's a lot of elements in that first little while that happen when we pick our body. But what many times we don't look at is what exactly actually happens. So let's examine some of the things I've discovered. One of them is this. When I realized that as a girl child, I was born with my eggs inside me. I did a little bit of kind of going back and back and back and back and thinking, well, where does the new stuff come in? Because if each one of us is born with our eggs inside of us, where does the new information come? Well, it only can come from one place, and that's the male. And so I began to take a look closer. Male sperms can be made in 20 minutes. They're current. They're in the moment. Women's eggs are ancient. except for the new things that keep coming in and adding to the matriarchal line. Because we have two lines to look at. We have a patriarchal line and a matriarchal line. And what happens is that they've come together in this particular instant, and that here we now are being. The other thing I want to mention is the self-love of each individual whose sperm and egg are coming together. Most of the work I do with transforming energies is that the egg and the sperm are not 100% love. I have found it where the one has had 100%, but the other one hasn't. And so what we do is a little bit of gestalt work. I just go back in and have them fill themselves up with the self-love. And if they cannot find any self-love in that parent, which the odd time happens, we do use universal love. So now when I redo the conception, we have two loves that come together. Now, first of all, that helps there. Now we're dealing with the soul. And that's why in the transformation work, usually one of the first things I do is to have the soul become whole and complete, because it is carrying guilt, it's carrying regret, it's carrying strong emotions from the past lives it has. Past lives. Very important. In what I have come to look at and see is that by 18 months, your major programs are in place, because whenever you have an emotion, you reach back in your memory bank and you make the same decision you made the last time you experienced that feeling. And all your feelings are past life based. That's why they're so important. And yes, we could talk about future lives, but I'm not going to add that into the mix at this point. So here we are. We have past lives coming in. We have our sperm and our egg that's growing, and once our body's born, this is it, here we are. But we do not know what our ancestors have actually put into the genetics that have been passed down, that usually often the soul will relate to, not always. That's why in a family, there can be many different families, and I've got a fairly big one to look at and see and examine, and you'll find traits that will come up. So how come that my cousin, last time I was back in New Zealand talking with a cousin of mine, we were saying, how come every generation there's been a certain behavioral element show up? How come that we have some that will succeed tremendously and some not? How we can just say, oh, it's the way they go, but why do we make those decisions? Why do we have that element? And that is because deep down, because it's not just us in a past life, it's our genetics, etheric genetic beliefs, attitudes, and judgments that are passed down. Now, where do they come from? First, let's take a look at oaths. You will not, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen somebody give their oath of allegiance to a general, to a tribe. We'll leave vows out of this for a moment, but the oath of allegiance is huge. So sometimes the oath is to a general, which means anybody who's in you might say a superior position. Some are in other forms. Often they're against God. They didn't know about science. They didn't know that the rains, that the cycles that the earth goes through. All they knew, there was no rain and there was no food, and that had to be God's fault, or whatever you call God. So there was a lot of cursing at God. Oaths. Not believing, not trusting. Strong, that go into the system. There's also vows. Usually vows are made in a religious context. You're going into an abbey, you're going into the priesthood, you're going into some form of religious form of whatever is more of a vow than an oath. An oath is more of a swear. I swear allegiance, I swear to God. But oaths are usually done with a very big intent. It has a different kind of energy behind it. I find a lot of times when I'm working with money matters, financial matters, creating in a financial way, that behind it are oaths that are, not oaths, vows that are made for poverty. spiritual values that say I can't have. It's wrong to have. I need to be sharing. I need to be giving. I need to be charitable. All of those things. And then not counting self. And so often we find there's many places that can come in. And also then if there's a matriarchal or a patriarchal line that's supporting that as well, that's going to be like a double whammy. And then lastly, we want to talk about is we want to talk about curses. The odd time somebody will come to me and say, I think our family is cursed. Now, at one point, I used to roll my eyes at that and go, yeah, right. You know, that's what certain groups of people would say in order to get money out of people. I'll take your curse away. Well, I do take curses away, actually, but they just pay my usual hourly fee. Now, and that's only a part of much bigger picture. It's not designed around that, but they are a fact. And how I found out about them, really, was a student of mine. One day, she used to phone me up when she had a bit of an issue with a client, wasn't sure what to do exactly, and we would discuss it maybe and give her some insights. And then she started talking about these oaths and vows and curses. And she passed it like very simply, like it was just a natural thing. So I added it to what to check. And then I found out, oh yeah, she was very, very incorrect. Vows, oaths, contract. I'm not talking about contracts that we make today, but that's part of it. So where do curses come from? Come from other people, whether it is in this life or another life. They are fueled with jealousy, usually wanting to destroy the other person. I just love one of the concepts that came up one time, and I shouldn't laugh because it wasn't funny. One of the curse came up for this client of mine, a lady client of mine, and the thought form was about that you will trip, and it was done because a guy liked my client, and this other girl liked the guy, and there was some dancing affected in this, and so she wanted her to trip. So she sent this thought form to her, which is what curses are, they're thought forms, and it went in, and she tripped. And the thing was, when I said this, I said, she wants you to trip up. And I thought, it doesn't make sense to me, right? Just wants you to trip up. And guess what? She said, I do that all the time. I trip over everything. I'm always tripping. And so clearing all that helped that just stop. And no more tripping up. And so very often, simple things that we think is just because of us and how we work and how we do actually turns out to have far bigger consequence. If you're an absorber, like I was, which is why I had to learn much of what I learned and work with, was because I would take everything in. I would take everything on. And the key here is to be able to let it all go and not be overwhelmed by these thought forms, and have your aura strong enough that it doesn't let any of these arrows in. Usually the arrows are around the head, although I did find one right in the middle of the back the other day for a person. And so it's really about being able to release those, let those go, so that you do not have to have it. But we're still talking about how the genetics. There are family curses. I would not a few years ago agreed with that, but I've seen it now. And I've seen where they've come in and how it's being taken in and how it's being perpetrated through the whole genetics of the line. And being able to go back and talk to the person that it originally occurred to and have them realize and clear that, so that that whole genetic line can be cleared of that curse that was placed on the family. So it is not only just in this life that these things come from. It's not only a past life that you may just have, because of the decision you've made, brought it in, but it also can be passed down genetically, which is an unfortunate thing. So what can be done about this? What can be done? Well, that's probably my life's work to a large degree. What I do is either past lives, which really doesn't take care of everything. Just it's more of I always think more of an informational element, although I do use them as a transformational process to clear the guilt and the regret and any strong emotions that that life is holding on to. Now, the energy transformation work that I do is designed to clear many, 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 many different areas so that you can create what it is that you want. We usually work with one single element. I like to begin with having the soul become whole and complete, then working on faith and trust, and also to loving yourself. Those three major things I think are really, really, really important. The objective is to live a happy life. The objective is to be happy with what you're doing, to be able to fulfill your desires, your wishes, your dreams with ease. Does that always happen? No, because we're human and we are constantly looking. I said to someone the other day, transformation work is a little like we clear the beach of all the rocks. And then a little while later, the rocks started to emerge up and coming forward. And so the key here is really for you to understand that life is a process. And one of the keys is to be able to transform that. So if I trust this information has been helpful, if you want to ask me any information about this, you can email me at norma.cowie@gmail.com, or you can check out my webpage at www.normacowie.com. Wish you well. Trust all those little genetic elements can be transformed. Thank you very much for listening. Bye now.